Hi everyone, what's up? Chelsea fans, I hope you're all feeling good. This is Xavier Mbuyamba, and you're listening to the Blue Day podcast. Enjoy.
Fellow Chelsea supporters, here at the Blue Day podcast, I am delighted to welcome this individual on the podcast today. He made 132 appearances for the club, scoring 29 goals. Plus, he was part of the Chelsea team that won promotion to the First Division in 1977. Here is Kenny Swain. Kenny, welcome to the Blue Day podcast. How are you?
Brilliant, Keith. Thank you. And pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be sharing sometimes with Chelsea supporters.
Kenny, honestly, the pleasure is all mine. Kenny, I want to sort of start off like I have done with my other interviews by sort of taking us back to the start of your footballing journey. And who were your influences growing up as a kid wanting to become a professional footballer?
When I look back, I think it was around about the age of 4 or 5, I was kicking a ball around. And I think I probably fell in love with the game when I was about 6, maybe 7. And here I am now, and I'm still in love with the game. But at the time, Everton were my team because on Merseyside in those days, Everton were the big club. Liverpool were some way behind, and the gates at Goodison in those days, 65, 68,000, and Liverpool would fill their stadium as well because, football's always been crazy in Liverpool. But they'd be getting 41,000, 42,000. But Everton were the big club. And, of course, they made the bigger impression on me. And I followed them really from about 14 years of age. Although I remember my dad taking me to a reserve game one night. And I must have been about 8 years of age. And walking up the steps towards the terraces, and then you get onto the terraces. This is an evening game now at Goodison. And I remember as I was climbing the steps there, the light was getting brighter and brighter and brighter. It was a floodlit game. And of course, when I got out and I saw the colour of this green beige, it was like a great big billiard table. And the lights were shining down, white, bright lights. And then Everton came out in their blue and white strip, and I can't remember who they were playing. I was just besotted. And so I think that was really when I really fell in love with the football and wanting to play and do all that, which I did from about 8 or 9 years of age, and did all the schoolboy stuff. At secondary school, played for the school team regular, played for the district and the county, and actually joined Bolton Wanderers as a schoolboy, aged 14, 15. But when it came to offering like apprenticeship terms in those days, they didn't offer one to me. There was 3 of us actually from Kirby boys team, and I was at Bolton Wanderers. Funnily enough, Terry McDermott went to Bury before he joined Liverpool, and Dennis Mortimer joined Coventry City. So between the 3 of us, the same age, the same year group, I think we've knocked up something like near 2,000 games between us. And if you, I suppose, if you line up some of the silverwares, well, mind you, I have to say Terry McDermott's got more than any of us put together at the times he had at Liverpool. But that was wonderful. That, and I'd stayed on at school actually. Once I wasn't offered not a contract, but an apprenticeship, football apprenticeship. I stayed on at school, got on with my studies, got myself 8 GCSEs. 2 A-levels, and decided that's it. I'm going to go to college and do PE. I wanted to be a PE teacher at that point. So I left Liverpool at 18, went to a college in Egham in Surrey. And that, for me, was probably the moment I knew I'd left home, if you like, having travelled down there and lived there for the next 3 years. And in my final year at college, I played for Wycombe Wanderers. I was just fortunate I was playing for the southeast of England against the southwest of England in what was Lokes Park. That was the old ground at Wycombe. And the manager happened to be watching the game, and he encouraged me to come back and play a few games for them, which I did. But I was ready to take a teaching post. I think it was in Acton, actually, West London. I was ready to take a teaching post in September. But I went back to Liverpool, went back home for the summer. And in that time, I'd got a letter from the club saying they'd seen me play. It was Dario Gradi, actually, and he said he'd been to college. He went to Loughborough somewhere. And he said it'd be a good experience for you to come down to Mitcham, the old training ground. Met Dave Sexton, trained for about a week, 10 days, and at the end of that time, he offered us a contract, like a 2-year contract, and I thought, blimey, what do I do? Because I start teaching in a month's time. But between them, they said, you don't get these opportunities too often. So that was it in terms of history. Playing or getting my first contract at Chelsea, and ending up doing 5.5 seasons there. Great start for my career.
I was just about to say, when you received that letter that Chelsea were looking to sign you, what was going through your mind at that point? Because, again, as you say, that doesn't happen very often.
Well, there was no realization of anything, what I had or what I didn't have until I played non-league football. And even then, I was comfortable playing it with grown men, as I saw it. I was a young sprog, and you're playing with grown men who are scratching around for their bonus and for their win bonus and all the rest of it. But after about 5 or 6 games, which I found quite comfortable, the thought or the prospect of going down to Chelsea, Stamford Bridge, and training there for a couple of coming out pre-season with us, for a month, and I'm thinking, wow, what's all this about? They're my second team as well, Chelsea. God, I'll be seeing, Peter Osgood, Tommy Baldwin, Ronnie Harris, Mickey Droy. You'd be seeing all these players. And I remember my first day there, walking in with I think I had a Safeway bag, which was a supermarket chain. I don't know if people remember that. But I walked in with a Safeway bag, and I remember Dario or somebody saying to me, you can't come in with, bloody shopping bag, let's get you a bag of some sort. I can't remember. It was a sports bag, to put your footwear in. But, the fact that they paid for you, they were buying me a pair of football boots, and not just football boots, but Adidas Copa Mundial and Adidas World Cup, which must have been, that's probably not far short of like 200 or 300 quid now.
Decent football boots.
Yeah, decent football boots, yeah. So, yeah, that was it. That was the start of it all.
What was your first day of training like? Because, as you say, you signed in the summer of 1973. That's it. So what was your first day of training like? Because, as you say, you was just about to become working in a school as a PE teacher, and then all of a sudden, you're on a football pitch with, as you say, fantastic players like Ron Harris and Mickey Droy. Yeah. What was going through your mind at that point, seeing this and on your first day of training? Well,
I thought I'd better prepare for it. And basically, about 10 days before I came down for training, I thought I'd better pound the streets of Liverpool or where I lived, which I did every day. I went out running. I started doing like sit-ups and press-ups and, doing sprints. And I was doing all just to try and keep myself fit, because what I didn't want to do was blow up in my first week. And that's something that stood me in good stead, because I did watch 1 or 2 players, being actually physically sick, on the first day or the second day of training. And I'm thinking, wow, and no names here, but I'm thinking, God, if I ever got in that position, if I ever got in that state, I'd want to shoot myself or want somebody to shoot me, because that's just, I couldn't stand that. And I was so glad I did what I did. And that sort of regime I continue throughout the whole of my career. In fact, I still go running now, but that's been part and parcel of, the professional side of the game. And I just didn't want to be in that state. I always felt when I come back for pre-season, wherever I was, and I wanted to make sure that if nothing else, I could keep up with the pack, keep up with the peloton. So yeah, that was the first day. I remember thinking, wow, I don't want to be in that state. And equally, because of the work I'd done, it stood me in good stead. I was comfortable again. I felt like, you're keeping up with the running, you're keeping up with the work. And then when the balls were out, that was when the real talent began to show, because when you're meeting people in a dressing room 1 minute and you don't know what they're like till you get out on the football pitch, and even in a warm-up, once you see them zip a ball about or take it with the weak foot or, clip it, bend it, and you're thinking, wow, these are players, these are top players, this lot.
Dave Sexton was the coach when you signed for the club. What was your relationship like with him, and how did you rate him as a coach?
Oh, he was renowned. He had a reputation, Dave, and I probably didn't get off to a good start, because after a couple of weeks, when he said, let's go outside and we'll have a chat, because he was obviously going to offer me a contract. I didn't know what a contract was. I didn't know what money was. I was a student. I'm still a student. I know I'm going into teaching, and teaching was going to pay me something like around 20, 23, 24 quid a week. Wow. And he sat me down and he said, look, we've had you now 10 days and I quite like what I see, and I think you've got a bit more in you. No promises, for the long-term future and all that stuff, but there's an opportunity here for you. We'll give you a 2-year contract, 1 year professional contract and 1 year as an option. And the option was the club's option, not mine. So if they thought, we'll keep him for another year, it meant that they could keep me on the same terms, as it were. Those contracts don't exist anymore. But anyway, so I said, right, okay. And I said, well, what makes you think I'm going to be a professional player? And he nearly fell off the chair. We were sitting outside. He nearly fell off his chair, because I was thinking, if I've got an opportunity to go into teaching and I'm going to give that up to go and do this, I want to be pretty sure that I've got a good chance of doing it. Whilst I think I know what I feel, I really need to know what he feels. What makes you think, So, like I said, he nearly fell off the chair, and he said, well, I think we've seen enough of you. I think you can handle the ball well. I think physically you're in good shape. You've got pace, blah, 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 blah. You're fitting in well, and, what more do you want to know? So, but in actual fact, the following year, I think Dave left the following year. Is that correct? 74, Dave Sexton? I think he left
Yeah.
Was it about September, October time? Can't remember now, but that first year with Dave was amazing. Most of the time I spent with the reserves, but then it didn't take long to get training with the first team. So I started training with the first team, and I made what was my debut, I think, was it home to Newcastle?
Yes, I was going to say, you made your debut for Chelsea the next year. It was against Newcastle. What was that moment like for you?
Well, it must have been about March, April time. It was definitely towards the end of the season. We were safe, and in those days, it was once you knew you were safe, they would start to blood a few youngsters or a few extra players in the squad, and that was the case with me. I played. I didn't actually start against Newcastle. I came on as a sub.
Yeah, you came on as a sub. Yeah, it was on the 16th of March was the date.
There you go. And I do remember coming off the park and looking over and seeing Terry McDermott playing for Newcastle, because he went from Bury to Newcastle. So I still followed my football and all the rest of it, but I'd lost touch with all my schoolmates and old teammates and that. And then I remember going over to Terry McDermott, shaking his hand and saying, "It's Kenny." And he went, "Swainy, what are you doing here?" I've missed that one. He said, "How long have you been here?" And I said, "I've been here about 18 months now." So he said, "Oh, brilliant." So that was that. But I think I played about another 4 or 5 games after that. And I remember Dave being like a real tactician, good motivator, and, obviously a real understanding of the game. And that, obviously working with him, I didn't think it only lasted till about October time. I think he left. then I think he went to QPR. Is that right?
Dave Sexton left the October of 74.
There you go. Yeah, I knew it was about that time, October 74. He left, and I thought, you know, I was buying into everything he was, and everything he, you know, wanted the club to be, and his teams and his players to be. And I thought, oh my God, what's going to happen now? You know, here we go. This is the start of, you know, the uncertainty of football for me. But, you know, I was fortunate that, you know, they kept me on for another year. And I think in that time, I probably just cracked it then in that my second year, I didn't quite crack it. I think I only played 2 games in my second year. But when David left, I thought, that's it, I've had it. But the start of the next season, you know, I got stuck into it, and I was okay then for the next 3 seasons.
Well, I was going to mention that it didn't take you long to score your first goal for Chelsea. It was against Arsenal in a 3-1 defeat. Despite the scoreline, though, that must have gave you a confidence boost for you personally, knowing that you've just recently joined the club. You was able to get on the score sheet, and then pretty much you are off and running based on the position that you was playing.
Yeah. I do remember it. I remember, again, I just remember coming off the field at the end of it, elated that I've scored. But we've been stuffed. And in fact, I don't know whether we were 3-0 up, but however it came, we lost 3-1 at home, you know, to Arsenal, which was no disgrace, really, because we had quite a young side out then. And I remember making a beeline for Alan Ball, because Alan Ball was playing for Arsenal. And he was my hero as a kid. And I thought, God, I've got to dash out, you know. And I just took, you know, focused on ball, went over there, shook his hand, and I was taller than him. And he had a squeaky voice. And he went, yeah, well done, son, you know, well done, good game. And I thought, great, Alan Ball said I played well. When I've been following since I was a kid. So, yeah, it was like just being like a kid. I was like a schoolboy for years. You know, meeting players and being on the same pitch as, you know, players who I thought were like fantastic players. Still gobsmacked, even late on in your career. You know, you get gobsmacked when you're looking at the opposition. You're thinking, God, what a player he is. You know, wow.
Now, according to my research, you missed the entirety of the 74-75 season.
Yes.
Can you just clarify on the situation on what that was? Was it to do with a nasty injury? Was it maybe lack of form, or manager decided to pick other players?
Well,
do you remember what the reason behind
it was? Well, I don't know what the reasons are, but I know what my feelings were, which were I'd broken into the team at the back end of the first season, 73. So in 1974, like March, April, May,
yes,
I probably played about 5 or 6 games. Maybe wasn't included the last, you know, 3 or 4 games of the season. Started the next year off. I think I had another year on my contract then, because, you know, obviously I'd broken into the first team, so they renewed the contract a little bit. And that following season, of course, David left in October, and I think Ron Stewart took over temporarily.
That's right.
And then Eddie McCready got the job.
He got the job in April of 75.
In 75, did he? So that season would have been, or was it Ken Shelto first? No, it was Ken Shelto came afterwards, didn't he?
Yeah, he came two
after
years
Eddie.
After.
Yeah, 2 years after, yeah. It might have been Ron Stewart then, who was manager. But anyway, I was out of the picture, that was for sure. Never played. I think I had one. Did I have one appearance? 2 appearances? I can't remember.
Well, according to my research, you didn't have any.
Yeah, and I went up to. I think it was just a token gesture. Are you sure Eddie McCready wasn't manager then?
Eddie became manager in April of 75, and he left the 1st of July 2 years later.
Right. Okay. Well, anyway, I was sub at Everton, right. And I thought that's just somebody's just doing me a favour, really. But the realisation was, I've had a good start. I've had a bad season this year, and I'm thinking, where do I go from here? So I think they offered me. Dario Gradi said to me, "They're going to offer you a contract." He said, "I know that," and he said, "But if you don't fancy it or you don't think your prospects are good here," he said, "I do know Dave will take you to QPR because he'd gone to QPR." And I thought at that time they had Don Givens, Irish international, Stan Bowles, hero of London, and bloody hell, he played for England as well, I think, Stan Bowles, and Dave Thomas, played for England on the wing. And I'm thinking, God, if I can't get in this Chelsea team, I've got no chance of getting in that one. So I remember thinking, I'll give it this season. So I just took the contract, signed it. It wasn't any great increase at all. And I just thought, if I can't get in this team, then I might as well go back to teaching. I may as well do something different. And that's how it worked out. I think the following season, I got in and I probably established myself then.
Yeah, the 75-76 season, you was back in the side, and you was able to be part of the squad. You did play a number of games, and you did score some goals. But I want to fast forward to the season after, the 76-77 season.
Yeah,
Chelsea in the second division at this point. Do you remember what the feeling was like in the dressing room in regards to the expectations of the players, rather than sort of what the manager wanted? What was sort of the mindset of the players, knowing that Chelsea were in the second division? You've had players here that have won trophies, have played in the first division, established themselves in the first division.
Yeah.
What was the expectations like amongst the squad that summer?
I think, Keith, because we had a talented group of players. I've got to say, young players. They weren't, Peter Osgood, Alan Hudson, Ian Hutchinson, Johnny Owens, Ronnie Harris. They weren't that quality yet, but they definitely had the potential to do that. And it was a tight-knit group, believe it or not. And I think we all felt, missing out 1 year, but having got that full season under our belt, I think we did fancy our chances that season. Did we? I think we just missed out. We got promotion. Was it the following season or was it that season, the promotion season?
It was the 77,
yeah. So I think we fancied our chances, from early on as well. And again, I think I played most of that season. I probably missed the last 2 or 3 games. And we were chasing it all the way through anyway, chasing promotion. So having got there and got promotion, I've got to say that was the first big thrill of my football life. And I've used that as quite often with kids, in coaching over the years with the FA and England kids, and by saying, there aren't many winners in the game, because we didn't win that league. Somebody else won that league. But we achieved, promotion, or it might have been the season before where we got close to promotion. They're what I call achievements. And, you've got to keep achieving in life and in football, in sport, whatever. Keep getting better, because, like I said, there aren't many winners. You can only win. Only one team can win the FA Cup. Only one team can win the league. Only one team can go into Europe and win a trophy, and that's it. 3 winners. And if you've got a great side like Liverpool did and Man City now, then you're down to one. There's only one place for someone else. But there's lots of scope for achievers. Chasing promotion, or finishing in the top half of the league, which they've never done before, or avoiding relegation. That's an achievement, So yeah, it was a massive achievement for me, and I thought, God, this is fantastic. This.
In your opinion, what was your personal highlight of that season, other than sort of getting promoted, but how you performed that season, and with the return of the goals that you had?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Anything that sort of stuck in your mind?
Yeah, I think, were we playing Tottenham that year? Did we play Tottenham at White Hart Lane early and we drew 2-2? Or was that the following season? That must have been the following season. No, we're in the championship year now, aren't we? So I remember scoring at Bristol City, getting I think it was a winning goal anyway. That was just like a personal highlight, because it was a good goal. Having said that, I'd have to say the home, the home games that we had and the crowds that we had, and they were increasing as the season went on. And, we had some ding-dong games there. I wouldn't say we were consistent, but we'd win games we weren't entitled to win. So I can't think of anything particularly special for me other than, getting there. What I do remember is I missed the last 4 games of the season when I think we went to Wolves for. Did we win we won promotion at Wolves, didn't we, that year?
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember walking around Sainsbury's with my wife, or Safeways with my wife that Saturday afternoon, and hearing the radios, around the shop, and people saying, "Oh, Chelsea have scored again," or "Oh, that's it, they've done it, they cracked it," and here's me walking down Safeway with my wife, because I think we only had one sub in those days, or
that's
two.
Right, yeah.
I wouldn't have been on the bus. They must have been saving money on my meal or whatever, my dinner. But that was
that's incredible.
That was the biggest wrench for me, because I think I played, I don't know, maybe 30 or 36, 38 games or something, and having to miss the last 2, 3, 4 games, whatever it was a bit painful. But at the end of the day, like I said, it was an amazing achievement, and I felt part of it, even though I missed the last little bit. And I was really looking forward to to playing in the first division.
Well, I was going to say, you made 41 appearances that season. You scored 14 goals.
You made me feel worse now.
Yeah, I did feel a little bit.
I only missed one game then. I only missed the last game. Oh my God. You've made me feel worse.
I'm sorry. I'll try and pick you up a little bit. But to get promoted must have been, as you say, a massive achievement for you, knowing that now you could be back in the first division, and it's where you ideally wanted to be.
Well, not just wanted to be. Like I said, years before, 2, 3, 4 years before, I'm thinking, oh, this club could be a big club. This really could be a big club. When you listen to, and I'd be sitting on the back of the coach coming back from some games with, Peter Osgood and John Dempsey and Ronnie Harris and David Hay, and you're thinking, wow, what a club this could be. And, with the fortunes that we had for the following 2 or 3 seasons in the second division was, but now we're in the first division again. I'm thinking, oh, this could be takeoff time. We could be really taking off here. So I think that's what I was looking forward to more than anything,
What's your opinion on Eddie McCready, who was the Chelsea manager at the time, and he was a former player, managed to get the club back up, and there's that iconic sort of scene where he's sort of holding the microphone, trying to tell the fans to calm down. I think it was the last home game was against Hull, and every time I think Chelsea scored, fans just bombarded the pitch, and there was a talk about the game being actually abandoned. And then you've got Eddie with the black hair, the sunglasses, and sort of a massive coat, telling people, you've done brilliantly all season, don't ruin it now. Do you remember much about that sort of time? And what, again, in general, what were your opinions on
Eddie? He was quite popular with the players, particularly the younger players. And of course, he made Ray Wilkins captain when he was only 18, 19, which was a bit bold, considering you've got Ron Harris, who was playing in the team, and David Hay, who's just come back from a World Cup, for Scotland. That was a bold move, but it worked out well for everyone, for the club, and for Ray, obviously, as well, because he went on to do well, to prove that he was the player that everybody thought he was going to be. He was a fantastic player, Ray. 2-footed, and there weren't many natural 2-footers around the game. Glenn Hoddle maybe in those days, but he could do anything, with either foot, take penalties, take corners, inside of his foot, outside of his foot, left and right. He was blessed with the, technical skill. That particular season was probably the hardest one for Eddie, because obviously, there was pressure on him. And I think that maybe told in the end, because I think there was all sorts of talk that he he was after a new contract, or he wanted more than was offered, or the club couldn't afford to pay him any more than what they offered. I think there was all that kind of rumour abounding, but the top and bottom of it was, they parted company, the club and Eddie, and yet that promotion was all secured during his tenure, and so all the credit really has to go down to him for that promotion. But then that's another sign of what happens in football, and he was like my third manager, or third manager in 3 or 4 years, and Ken Shelato took over. Is that right? Did Ken take
right.
over?
He took over in July. That's right, and he was there for just over a year. He left in 78.
Yeah, and in that time, I think it was clear because Teddy Maybank was doing well. Tommy Langley was knocking in goals. Steve Finiston, I'm not so sure Steve left before I left, but they had plenty of goal scorers, and I started to drift backwards playing in midfield, and I thought, I wasn't sure about my prospects for that season. And come Christmas time, I think I was out, not Christmas time, but about December time, I was out of the team, and I thought, here we go again. But that's all part and parcel of being competitive, and having setbacks, and getting knocked off the horse and getting back on it again, and trying to. So, where you could credit Eddie for that, Ken had a difficult task in taking over from him and Eddie's popularity, and to try and steer the club into its its next passage.
What was the squad's reaction like to Ken taking the job? Because as you say, Eddie was popular with the Chelsea team and also the Chelsea fans. Ken's come in.
Yeah.
You've mentioned that he partly was between a rock and a hard place in trying to deal with everything with the club. Bearing in mind they've just gone back into the first division. What was the squad's reaction to Ken taking the role?
Yeah. Well, again, it was quite favourable because most of the boys had probably grown up being coached by Ken, for many years, because Ken was not just like the under-18s youth coach. He was also, taking evening training for, 14s and 15s. So he'd have seen most of those boys, Steve Wicks, the Wilkins brothers, Ray Lou, David Stride, bless him. There's lots of the kids would have played under Dave, so he would have been a popular choice amongst them.
Now, you mentioned earlier about your variety of positions that you had at Chelsea. You were striker, then I believe when I looked at your research, you played on the wing. Certain games you actually played as fullback as well. Was this difficult for you to adapt, bearing in mind, but based on how you played, and then all of a sudden you've had to say change positions? Was it hard for you mentally to adapt?
Nah, not particularly. I wouldn't say, because I never looked at myself as a goal scorer. Steve Finiston was your archetypal goal scorer. He would lose sleep if he didn't score 15 goals in training. He wouldn't sleep that night. And when it came to the game on Saturday, if we'd won 1-0 and he hasn't scored, he'd be miserable. But we won 1-0, but he didn't score. He was a goal scorer. I was never in that boat. I was never in that league. I could make him, or I could get a cross, or I could slot somebody in, or I could get a rebound myself, and that's brilliant. But he never looked at it that way. So for me, playing in a midfield role, which was attacking, wasn't much different from playing wide or playing as a second striker with Steve Finiston. You're playing just beside him. So, those moves weren't too bad. And I changed to fullback, came at Villa after my move from Chelsea to Villa. And I think I did about 6 months as a striker. I was second striker with Andy Gray and Brian Little. And I think the following season, so I'd done 6 months, and then the following season, an opportunity came at right back because they'd sold John Gidman. I mean, I know we're moving on to Aston Villa here, but they'd sold John Gidman, who was an England international, and I was just fitting in for a while, as I saw it. And the manager, Ron Saunders, said, you've done all right there, like 2-3 games. He said, let's give you a run there and see. Do you fancy it, first of all? Because if you don't, I'm going to have to go and buy a fullback. And if you do, then I'm going to have to buy, a replacement for you up front. I just need to know. And I said, okay, well, let's give it a go. So he said, well, you're going to play the next 6 games. Well, nobody ever guarantees you the game, let alone 6 games. But he said, well, you play in the next 6 games and then we'll have a chat. Which I did, played, all comfortable, hand in glove, fit for me. And that was it. I made the rest of my career at fullback.
The rest is history.
The rest is history. But, at Chelsea, I do think I might have played 1 game, 2 games, or slotted in somewhere for maybe Graham Wilkins or Johnny Sparrow or somebody. Gary Locke, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chelsea's return to the First Division, they finished 16th. Overall, and again, was based on your own performances, was you happy with your return to the First Division, and was you happy with the end result on your performances overall?
Is this 77, 78 now?
That's right, yes.
77, 78. Well, again, like I said, I think I played early on. It was tough. It was a different level of football altogether. Probably a level that maybe I'd forgotten, being in the the second division. But it was catching up with all of us, to be fair, because we were a young side and we did well, in the second division. But now you're up against, Liverpool will win things left, right, and centre. Manchester United weren't quite the force that they turned out to be. Arsenal were a force for sure. Everton were a force. Tottenham were doing well, so there were some bloody good teams in that league. So that was a bit of a surprise or a knockback. And I suppose when Ken left me out for a few games, again, I thought, bloody hell, I need to do something about this. If I can't get in this team, I need to probably move now. Not that I wanted to move. I didn't want to move at all. But I went on the transfer.
I was going to talk about your departure in a minute. I just want to sort of just touch on the Chelsea crowd itself, and what was it like sort of playing in front of the Chelsea supporters? Because Stamford Bridge back then was a lot different to what it is now. What was it like, especially with midweek games, for example? Was there like a particular difference atmosphere between night games to a Saturday at 3:00?
Well, I don't want to ask you what the average attendance was, but I'm going to ask you. I don't know what the average attendance was, but it wasn't. You didn't get like 40 odd thousand there every week. It was like 28,000, 31,000, and then all of a sudden you're playing West Ham, and it's like 48,000, or you're playing Tottenham and it's 50,000. You're playing Fulham, and of course Fulham were buying players like George Best, Alan Mullery. They had some great players, and so that was a derby match for Chelsea. And I remember we must have had about 50 odd thousand the season before on a Boxing Day, because it was a local derby. But one of my most vivid memories, when you were talking about crowds before, and you're looking at stadiums and the terraces. I've got a picture somewhere. I've got it at home here somewhere of a game we played against Tottenham at White Hart Lane. Baking hot day. It must have been about September time. And we drew 2-2. I'd scored both goals. And that's why I found it like so memorable. But the most amazing thing was somebody sent me this picture just years ago, and I'd scored a header. And I think they used to call it the shelf at Tottenham.
I believe so.
The side of the ground. So it wasn't like all their football fans, all their home fans went on the shelf, which was the side of the pitch. They they weren't bothered about the ends. The oppositions can take those. But the crowd on the Shelf that day, and it was something like 50, I can't remember, 52, 56,000 people. And you can't, all you can see is just heads together. It looks like it's an amazing picture there, just to show people that, back in those days, everybody stood on the terraces then. And, I don't know where they thought it was full and it wasn't full, but, you look at games like that and the one that you referred to earlier on, and you can see some incredible crowds then. I'm not even so sure they were clearly reflected or honestly reflected.
I want to discuss your final season now. This is the season where you did score 2 against Tottenham. It was in the August of 78. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Chelsea did have a terrible start to the 79 season, whereby from the start of it, I think Chelsea only won a period of one game in a space of 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
Why do you think Chelsea were very inconsistent at this point, bearing in mind the squad they had?
Well, when you said the squad they had, it was still based on a young squad. And when I look at the senior pros at the time, they were probably, no disrespect to Ron, he probably had his better days before then. Peter Bonetti was in goal. He'd been an England international, in 1970 or 74. David Hay had joined us. He was a big signing at the time. And I think, we largely we largely used all of the younger players. So going from second division football and getting used to it for the season and then dominating it and doing well in it and thinking, great, you've cracked it. Then to go into the first division and then come up against Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa and Glenn Hoddle, Steve Perryman.
Complete change.
And then you're looking at who you're playing next week. Oh, you're going to go up to Anfield. Oh, my God, And who's after that? You're going down to Southampton. Isn't that where Ozzy went? Yeah, Southampton, yeah. They've also taken Kevin Keegan and Uncle Tom Copley and all. And, there's some great players in that league still. And so I think it was always going to be difficult, but I think there was an element of, not, a bit of a blow of confidence. You get into a bit of a rut. I've always said this about, if you get in a rut of losing games, it's hard to get out of. And equally, when you get into a rut of winning games and, good fortune, you think, how did we win that one today? It was an own goal, or you think, oh, the referee's given us a penalty, 2 minutes from time. You can't believe your luck sometimes. And I think we were in a bit of a rut at the start of the season. And in fact, I think that's probably why, maybe I didn't play, for Ken Shellito. Maybe thought, no, I need something else. I need something different. So I'm sure I wasn't the only one left out of the squad, but I think it was a matter of confidence and also the realization of, wow, this is a different level. And you see it today. You can see it with championship clubs going into the Premier League. It's a real
difference.
It's a real arduous task to get anywhere near the top half of the table. Anybody finishing the top half of the table from the Championship is, they must be special. Like Wolves were last year. They're special. They were special last year.
Now, I was going through my research about the time of this period where certain players, as you say, were on the way out. And there was something that came up on my research. There was a story that came out in one of the papers. It was about your request to move, shall we say. Is it true that you did put in a transfer while at Chelsea and said that you wanted to leave?
Yeah. In those days, if you put a transfer request in, if you had something in your contract like loyalty or whatever, loyalty bonus or loyalty payments or whatever, that wouldn't be paid. And also, if you requested I think you forfeited something if you requested it. And I thought, well, I wasn't bothered about that. I just wanted to be playing first team football. Thought I should be playing first team football. Thought I'm at this level, and if I can't play in this team, and we're struggling as well, we were not getting results, I'm thinking maybe I should move on. So I did hand in a transfer request, and I played a few reserve games, I think, for Chelsea, and unknowingly, a fellow called Brian Eastick, who was a coach. He was a youth coach at Chelsea at the time, and Brian was he'd said to me on a couple of occasions, I think somebody from Aston Villa's come to see you today. So I said, how do you know this? Or who do you know? Or whatever. But he had his ears to the ground, Brian. So I played a few games, and then the next thing was Ken. In fact, it might have been Ken. It might have been Frank Upton, because Frank was a coach under Ken. And Frank, funnily enough, came from Villa.
Right.
Previously, he come from Villa as a first team coach to Chelsea as a first team coach under Ken's shadow, but they were friends, you know. So I think it might have been Frank who rang me to say Villa are interested in you. They've made an offer, and Ron Saunders, the manager there, he'd like to meet and have a chat with you. Here's his number. Give him a call. But yeah. I thought, right, okay, is that how it works? Anyway, I went up. I rang Ron, and I went up on a Thursday night, I think. Spoke to him. He'd offered me terms, you know, for a 3-year contract, and I went back to Chelsea on that Thursday night. Trained with them on the Friday. And Chelsea were playing Villa on the Saturday at Stamford Bridge. So I was sitting in the stand. I wasn't in the team. And Ron had said to me, will you be at the game Saturday? And I said, well, I'll be at the game. I don't think I'll be playing, but I will be at the game. He said, well, come and let me know what you think after the game. Because he wasn't going to hang around. He wasn't going to be, you know.
Of course.
He just said, okay, it's Thursday night, so we're playing. Let's, you know, think it over the next day or two and let me know on Saturday after the game. So I thought, great, yeah. So I did. I said, yeah, great. I'm coming up. And he said, great, okay, come up on Monday or Tuesday or whatever. And I think Brian Mears, the chairman, he was the chairman, I think, yeah.
Yes,
Brian,
right, yeah. Brian Mears, chairman of Chelsea. Yeah.
Brian he'd rang me to say, you know, I'm not too sure about all this, you know, this deal or whatever. He said, you know, we don't really want you to go. He said, so I don't know how this has happened, you know. And I sensed a little bit of internal, you know, discussions had gone on there. But I said, well, I'm going up to see him. I'm going to see Ron Saunders on Tuesday or Wednesday. And he said, well, hold fire. And I thought, bloody hell, what do I do? I thought it was terrible. The business was terrible, the way they were going about it. So I think it was Frank who rang me on the Monday night to say, yeah, you can go up. We've spoken to the chairman and all the rest of it. And I said, well, he rang me to say, you know, what's going on? So he said, well, I'm ringing you now to tell you that you can go and speak to them. So that was it. I'd already spoken to him anyway, and I'd agreed everything. So I went up on the Wednesday, and Tony Barton, who was Ron's assistant at the time.
Assistant manager, I believe, yes.
Manager. Tony had come to Birmingham International Station to meet me. And he said, I'll take you to your hotel where you're staying later. He said, but we're just going down to the gaffer's house. He said, he wants you to come round and say hello. And the chairman, you know, the Villa chairman wants to come and meet you as well. And I just felt straight away, God, this is fantastic, you know, welcoming. And like a warm reception. So went round to Ron's house. His wife answered the door. Hello, big smile. Irish lady. She doesn't live far from me now, actually. She gave us a warm welcome. Would you like a cup of tea, or do you want a beer, or do you want a drink or something? I said, no, I'll just have a cold drink. I'll be fine. Met Ron, and then Harry Carts, the chairman, he came round, within 5 or 10 minutes. He came in. He was only a little short fella. And again, really welcoming. And I hope you have a good time with us and blah, blah, blah. And that was it. My Chelsea days were over. But I've got to say, when we, that first 6 months at Villa, which was from about Christmas through to the end of the season, I was still living in Rains Park, Southwest 20.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and we'd had a house there, my wife and kids, and when we sold up and we were leaving, which was probably a year later, we were driving up there to put the boys in school and everything. God, we were all crying. Me, my wife, and the 2 kids, we were all crying because we really didn't want to go. But
right.
I realised, there was no future for me here, or nothing secure here. Not that there is security, but I couldn't see anything on the horizon at Chelsea, and yet the opportunity to go to Villa, and the squad of players they had, the reputation they had, they were a bigger club than Villa. They were a bigger club than Chelsea at the time. They had some fantastic players, Andy Gray, Brian Little, bloody hell, fantastic team, and big crowds as well. I'd be a fool to turn it down. 3-year contract. I've got to go.
Yeah.
It still didn't stop us getting upset driving up the A3 and crying our eyes out, all of us.
Was there any sort of Chelsea teammate that you spoke to about this potential move? Was there anybody that sort of said to you, stay, it could be an opportunity?
Yeah.
Did you get any sort of feedback from players or even supporters?
Yeah, not so much the supporters, because I think once I'd gone on that Tuesday, that was it, finished.
Right.
And so I didn't see the supporters again. However, Duncan McKenzie was at Chelsea at the time, and Chelsea had signed him from Everton, and his wife apparently went to the same school as my wife. I'm not so sure they knew each other, but there was a link there with him. And Duncan, being an Everton player, and he was a character, and he was a trickster, on the ball. He had amazing ability and skills and all the rest of it. But as a coach now and understanding what football is all about, he must have been a bloody nightmare, to deal with. To try and get him to play in a system or fulfill a role within the team.
Yeah.
Oh, he was a nightmare, for that. But he was brilliant. In fact, he was good company. He was a laugh. But he said to me, I said, get yourself up there. He said, the Villa, can you imagine? He said, joining the Villa. And he was just painting a fantastic picture. And he said, have you played at Villa Park? And I said, yeah, I think we have, yeah. He said, what a place that is. It's one of those grounds. They're one of the top 12, the original 12 who formed the league. They've got a fantastic history, and, Andy Gray and all them. Bloody hell, you do well to get in that team. So he said, that's a great move for you. I wouldn't turn Villa down now. I wouldn't have turned Villa down any time, he said. So.
And looking back, you certainly made the right move based on what you won at Villa.
Yeah, but that's easy in hindsight, isn't it? It's easy.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing. Yes.
Yeah. But at the time, I did think my heart was in London. My heart was in Chelsea, and but my mind was on Villa, and it was a new chapter. And of course, 5 years. I'd done 3 years at university, so I've now doubled my time at university at one football club. Yeah. And I'm now 20, I was thinking about 26 at the time. And I thought, 3-year contract, that takes me up to like 28, 29. I could be having 10 years here, And I did that. I ended up with 4.5, 5 seasons at Villa. So I ended up doing 10 years at both clubs, which was a great start. Well, great start. My career should have finished after that. But I was, I look back and I think, again with hindsight, and I think, wow, bloody hell. When I left Villa, after the European Cup win, I went to Forest to play with Cloughie.
He was under Brian Clough, yes.
And I mean, what an experience that was. What an experience. He was, and he was an enigma.
What kind of manager was he? Because I know that, I know we're sort of partly going off track, but in regards to Brian Clough himself, people have mentioned.
Keith, we'd be here all day.
Would we be here? Oh, right.
We'd be here all day, honestly. And all those Chelsea supporters would be thinking, "Oh, come on, tell us a few stories." But he was a one-off. He was spontaneous. There was nothing rehearsed about him. I look at some managers or coaches now, and I think, they're almost reading off something, or they prepared themselves for this, or, But he was bang, he just shot from the hips straight away, and he had no, he could destroy you in a sentence, but equally, wow, he could put you on that pedestal up there, with two comments, and he was a lion, an absolute lion of a manager, fearless, absolutely, totally fearless. He had not respect. But he had not regard, even. What's the word I'm looking for? He, walking in Anfield or walking in, Old Trafford or whatever.
He wasn't intimidated with the atmosphere or anything.
Totally unintimidated by reputation or whatever. He just breezed in, and he was such a big character that when he breezed into these places, everybody would be, almost ducking and diving. "Hi, Mr. Clough. Hi, Brian," or whatever, and he'd just be, "Morning," or "Good afternoon," or whatever. "Could you get us a pot of tea? Just get us a pot of tea, and that'll be great." It was fantastic, and I'd keep it all here till midnight tonight. Tell you stories about him. It was a fantastic 2-3 years I had there. I've got to say, probably the happiest 2 years. We didn't actually win anything. I think we finished runners up. No, we finished third to Liverpool, and I think Southampton pipped us on the last day. There you go, Southampton. Right, yeah. They had Kevin Keegan and Mick Shannon, and they had some bloody good players. Anyway, they pipped us one season, so I think we finished third, but didn't. And again, got to a semi-final of the UEFA Cup. We got to the semi-final against Anderlecht, so almost achieved enormous things. But they'd had their best days just before I joined them. When they won they went up with us, didn't they? They went up with Chelsea. Yeah. So 10 years at Chelsea and Villa, and then you get a stroke of good luck like that. 2 or 3 years at Forest with Brian Clough. Wow. And playing
bad career.
Games, yeah. And one of the games was we were playing Barcelona, and I was at Forest. And Diego Maradona was playing for Barca at that time. And he was an unbelievable footballer. Oh, breathtaking footballer, Maradona. But I'm not so sure you get opportunities like that, and when they come, like I said to you before, to be on the same football field as an icon or as a fantastic player, I'm like a supporter. I'm overawed. I'm thinking, wow, I'm up against him today, or he's playing, or
very similar to how you was with Alan Ball.
Yeah,
you
exactly. Yeah. And then here goes, and then as soon as Forest is over, I go to Portsmouth to play for Alan Ball.
And he's the manager, yeah.
For 3 years. Oh my God, how's you Donald Duck?
So that's just sort of your Chelsea career, and you've mentioned about you enjoyed your time at Chelsea, and
fantastic.
Still
love it. Still love the club. Still love the players I played with. Supporters I see. Games I come to. I still. And Chelsea Football Club. I don't know how many years they've been doing this now, but every Christmas, I get a Christmas hamper from the football club, and I don't know another club in the country that does anything like that. Right. And so when I tell colleagues, friends, or football fans or whatever, I get a Christmas hamper every year. They don't believe me. I said honestly, and I don't know who. They can't just send it to me. Surely, I'm not. Oh, they must send them out to all sorts of people. But I thought, what a fantastic gesture that is, and
because they don't forget.
Yeah, and in fact, behind me now in this cabinet here is my my wedding gift from Chelsea Football Club, which was a cheque, I think, for about £100, which was like probably a week's wages when I first started. And I bought this dinner set, which we've had not Royal Dalton, Denby. We bought this dinner set, yeah, an 8-piece dinner set, which we've still got, and that was our wedding present from Chelsea Football Club.
Fantastic. Brilliant.
So I love the place.
I want to talk about current events just to sort of wrap up the interview.
Okay.
One sort of thing I've mentioned to all my guests, and some of them have been quite vocal about it, and obviously with your position with the Premier League as well. Kenny, what's your thoughts on VAR? Do you think it's good for the game? Have you seen something that you liked, something you perhaps did not like? What's your overall thoughts on it?
Yeah, I've got to hold my counsel a little here, because I think there'll be changes after the European event. The UEFA European competition this year, just on, and also the feedback that they were getting from the media and the press from last season. I think there'll be a real sharpening up of the whole operation. I think there's no doubt, it's cleared up, or it can clear up. It's got the power to clear up quite a few things. But I do think I think there are still things referees should be more accountable or responsible than VAR for making certain decisions. So if you let VAR interject too much and too often in lots of situations or decisions, then I think the joy of watching the game and the spontaneity of it is going to be lost, and so we could end up you could end up waiting for judgments. And even when the judgments are made, what will never change is the opinions of managers, coaches, and players. That will never change. And they can contest all sorts, and they can take the mickey out of 2 millimeters on your elbow or whatever it is. But I do think it will improve the reliability of the decision making. It will improve that. But I'm not too sure that referees have almost they're not really arbitrators out there, because I can see sometimes, they'll a decision won't be made and they'll wait for VAR.
Do you think, just sort of on that, do you think referees are, say, passing the buck onto VAR? So if they, say, for example, miss a decision, they would expect VAR to do it, but then there could be a clash of opinions on certain decisions. Do you think that could be why, when you see certain decisions made and you think, why on earth has VAR sort of looked into that and thought that was a red card? For example, certain challenges that have been made by players last season that, say, a few years ago would not have been a red card, but then all of a sudden now, because of the video assistant referee, they deem it as a red card because they've, say, slowed the picture down a little bit, so it looks worse than it probably did in live action. Do you think, say, referees are maybe sort of, how can I put it, sort of rightfully blaming VAR a little bit and, say, putting the responsibility too much on that technology?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with that one. I don't doubt the intent of VAR, or the people who work for VAR, or referees. I don't doubt their intent to want to make the most informed decision on a football field, whatever it is, whatever the incident is. I think the lines bit is quite easy. The goal line, technology, balls being out of play. You can see it, most of them. But if it gets too involved in too many incidents or too many issues, we're in danger of losing the spontaneity and the real joy of football. I think supporters will be, and they've already voiced their opinions anyway, and that's why I'm holding my counsel.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
I'm pretty confident that what we'll see this season will be a big improvement on how it's been implemented, so far. And I think the European campaign just gone will be an influence on that as well.
Well, fingers crossed, and hopefully, as you say, people are going to start talking about the football was as in the result rather than controversy over VAR. But Kenny, just a couple of more questions before I do let you go. I want to sort of get your thoughts on the current Chelsea, European champions for the second time.
Wow.
Tuchel's done. Tuchel, I'll freely admit on the podcast, and I've said it before, I wasn't his biggest fan. I did think that he wasn't going to be a good choice for Chelsea. He's obviously proved me wrong on the European front, but what's your thoughts on the current crop of Chelsea of 2021?
European champions. Can't argue with it.
No, you certainly can't.
You can't argue with that. And that's, I'm pleased because that's 3 clubs that I've played for that have won the European Cup. But I think that was, like I said back then, they were destined for big things, Chelsea, and they've sustained it. And I know, people might say, the owner or the board, make changes at, just at will. But it's not stopped a sustained haul of trophies and, European Champions League qualifications consistently, other cups as well. I think they've, they're up there with the elite now, Chelsea.
Just finally, Kenny, what are your thoughts when you look back on your career at Chelsea? How do you sort of see your career?
How do I see it? Well, I think I've just been I think I've been blessed, to have started at Chelsea, and a club and a reputation and a culture about the place was a fantastic introduction, into football for me. Loved every minute of it. Spent the best part of 10 years in London. Loved it. Still love it now. And I work as a consultant in youth and coach development now for the Premier League. And our office is still in London, in Paddington. Before that, it was in Portland Place. So we've been up and down. Well, I've been up and down to London now, working for the FA as well for about the last 15 years. So I've never really left London. I mean, I played at Villa and played at Forest and gone down to Portsmouth. But I've always returned to, a bit like Liverpool, to be honest, because I love going back to Liverpool and I love going back to London. But London's never really left us. And I think to have had that opportunity and the opportunities that followed, I never look back and think, well, what happens if this or what happens if that, if that door had opened, this one would have closed. And I just feel blessed that I've had, the opportunities and the experiences that I've acquired up to now.
Well,
and I'm still in love with it.
Well, I'm pleased that I've been able to have you on the podcast today, Kenny. It's been a fantastic insight into your career and obviously your thoughts on certain matters. So just want to say thank you once again, Kenny, for being part of the podcast. And hopefully once the fans are back, full stadiums, we'll be able to see you at the bridge one day.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the thing about football, isn't it? it's it's nothing without 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, 80,000. Football's nothing without crowds.
Absolutely. Completely agree with that. Kenny, thank you
All right.
very much, and we'll speak to you soon.
That's great. And my
Take it
regards,
easy.
Chelsea fans.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.